The shadow in the glass. The air inside the Raven Division's training arena was colder than steel, filled with the hum of distant generators and the soft echo of boots on metal floors. Frank Maccury stood at the center, breath steady, muscles tense, his mask reflecting faint blue light. This was no longer practice. This was his first official trial. Failure meant removal from the division, and possibly erasure from existence. "Remember," Raven's deep voice echoed through the comms, calm but commanding, "the mind breaks before the body does. Keep your focus where your fear is." Frank didn't reply. He simply nodded once, glancing at the wall of shifting holographic patterns before him. The mission was simple: retrieve a classified data core hidden within a virtual replica of the Citadel. But the simulation wasn't ordinary. It adapted. It learned. And it fought back. As the sequence began, the metallic walls shimmered and transformed into a glass city, fog swirling between high towers. Frank's boots crunched against the cracked pavement as his HUD flickered with static. Then, a soft whisper cut through the noise. "You shouldn't be here, Frank Maccury." He froze. The voice wasn't Raven's. It was softer, older, almost familiar. "Identify yourself," he barked, scanning the shadows. His sensors picked up movement, a faint human silhouette reflected across the mirrored glass walls, but nowhere to be seen directly. A red warning flashed across his visor: "Intrusion detected, unknown signal." Somewhere in the observation chamber, Annie watched her brother's vitals spike. "Raven. Someone's interfering with the simulation feed," she warned, fingers flying across her console. Raven's masked face tilted slightly. "Keep it stable," he ordered. "This might be part of the real test." Annie frowned. Or something else entirely. Inside the simulation, the fog thickened. The city began to shift, buildings bending unnaturally as if breathing. Frank steadied his pulse, recalling Raven's teachings: "Control your fear before it controls you." He advanced cautiously until a figure stepped through the fog, cloaked, masked, and silent. But this mask was different: dark glass with glowing crimson veins running through it. The figure moved like smoke, voice cutting through the digital haze. "Your father walked the same path, Frank, but he failed the trial." Frank froze, his heart pounding. "What did you say?" The figure tilted its head slightly. He thought he could control what was never meant to be controlled. Project Mirror Mind wasn't just a mission. It was a weapon. "And you're part of it." Frank's mind spiraled. "Weapon?" His pulse quickened, static flooding his visor. "Who are you?" he demanded. "A shadow your father left behind," the voice answered, fading into distortion. The world glitched violently, glass towers shattering, floor panels collapsing. Frank lunged forward, trying to stabilize the feed, when a massive shockwave threw him off his feet. Outside the simulation, alarms blared. Annie's screen filled with red warnings: reality distortion detected. "Shut it down," she shouted. "He's not in the system anymore. He's inside something else." Raven's eyes narrowed behind his mask. "No," he muttered. "He's inside the truth." Frank staggered to his knees, the air around him heavy with static. The environment flickered again, and in one frozen moment of silence, he saw it: his father's image reflected on every glass surface, hand reaching toward him. "Find the truth, before it finds you." Then, everything went dark. When the system rebooted, Frank was lying on the cold training floor, sweat dripping down his face, his mask cracked. Annie rushed to him, trembling. "Frank, are you okay? What happened?" Frank slowly opened his eyes. Someone else was there. Someone who knew about father. "He said I was part of Project Mirror Mind." Raven stepped closer, voice low. "Then the trials have begun for real." The arena lights dimmed, casting long shadows on the metallic walls. Somewhere deep within the system, a distorted signal pulsed again, faint but unmistakable. Helix node reactivated. And in the shadows, the unknown figure smiled, watching from the other side of the glass. The hum of the Raven Division's control room filled the silence like an unspoken threat. The lights flickered, screens hissed static, and somewhere deep underground, the sound of dripping water echoed through the steel corridors of the haven. Frank sat on the recovery bench, his cracked mask resting beside him, knuckles bruised and heartbeat still uneven. Annie stood near the monitors, scrolling through endless lines of corrupted data, her fingers moving faster than thought. She didn't speak at first, but when she did, her voice was heavy. "Frank, that signal wasn't part of the simulation." He looked up slowly. "Then what was it?" Annie hesitated, eyes reflecting the green glow of her screens. "It came from outside the haven, somewhere deep in the old citadel ruins. And," she swallowed, "it carried Father's encryption code." The air froze. Even Raven, standing silently in the corner, turned his masked face toward her. "That's impossible," he said quietly. "Your father's encryption key was buried with him." Frank clenched his jaw. "Unless he isn't buried." The words hung in the air like thunder waiting to strike. Raven stepped forward, his shadow stretching across the floor. "You're walking into dangerous ground, Maccury. Hope is a weapon, sharper than any blade, and twice as deadly when it turns." Frank stood, steady but burning with resolve. "I don't care. I saw him. Or something that looked like him. He's connected to this Project Mirror Mind, and I need to know why." Raven's silence was answer enough. Moments later, the heavy doors slid open. Elias entered, his coat damp from the upper tunnels, a faint metallic smell clinging to him. His expression was grim, eyes locked on Raven. "So, the system spoke to him," he said. "I warned you this would happen." Frank turned. "You know something, don't you? About my father. About what he was doing with Helix." Elias's eyes darkened, old memories flashing like ghosts behind them. "Your father was one of us. One of the first to survive the mirror tests. But he learned something that changed everything, something the world was never meant to know." "What did he find?" Annie asked softly. Elias sighed. "That Project Mirror Mind wasn't designed to protect the nation. It was designed to rewrite it." Frank frowned. "Rewrite?" Raven cut in, his tone colder than ever. Project Mirror Mind was a psychological algorithm, capable of mirroring the consciousness of key agents. To create duplicates. Perfect copies. Annie gasped. "You mean clones?" "No," Elias said. "Not clones. Reflections. Artificial minds that think, feel, and fight exactly like the original, only controlled by Helix." Frank felt his pulse spike, the memory of the masked figure flooding back. The way it moved. The way it knew. "It said my father failed the trial," he murmured. "But what if what I saw wasn't him? What if it was his reflection?" Raven's silence confirmed it. A deep alarm suddenly blared through the base, echoing off the steel walls. Annie's console exploded with alerts, encrypted signals flashing red. "Someone's inside our system again," she shouted. "They're tracing us, from the Citadel ruins." Raven's voice snapped like a whip. "Elias, take them to sublevel 9. No." The power flickered once, twice, then the lights died completely. Darkness swallowed the haven. In that darkness, Frank heard it again, that same distorted whisper from the simulation. "Find the mirror, Frank. Before it finds you." A faint glow rippled across the wall, data streams forming into symbols, words written in code only Annie could read. She gasped. It's his signature," she whispered. "Dad's code." Raven activated his backup visor light. "No," he said quietly. "That's not your father. That's what's left of him." Frank looked around, heart pounding. "What do you mean?" Elias stepped closer, voice grave. "Your father's consciousness may still be alive, trapped inside the system Helix built." The realization hit Frank like a storm. His father, alive, but digital. A mind without a body. Annie covered her mouth, tears foaming. "He's been inside Mirror Mind this whole time?" "Maybe," Elias said. "But if Helix finds him first, they'll use him to finish what he started, the total reconstruction of reality itself." Raven's gaze fell on Frank. "Now you understand your trial. To find your father, you'll have to go where no one returns, inside the mirror itself." The emergency lights flared red as sirens roared across the base. Somewhere above, metal doors slammed shut, sealing the haven. Helix had found them. Frank turned to Raven, fists clenched. Then open the path. I'm going in. Raven paused, the faintest trace of emotion flickering in his tone. You've got your father's fire, Maccury. But fire burns everything it touches. Frank stepped forward, eyes fierce behind his cracked mask. Then let it burn the truth. The moment the portal ignited, the air itself began to vibrate. A sphere of light pulsed in the center of the chamber, rippling like liquid glass. Its reflection spread across the walls, swallowing every shadow, every trace of the Haven's steel corridors. Frank stood before it, his mask lowered, eyes burning with something between fear and determination. Annie adjusted the neural sync band around her temple, her fingers trembling despite her calm face. Raven watched in silence, arms crossed, the dim red glow of the chamber reflecting off his visor. This isn't a simulation, Raven warned. Once you're inside, the mirror won't distinguish thought from reality. Whatever you fear, it will become flesh. Frank's voice was steady. Then I'll make my fear my weapon. Annie looked at him, a flicker of emotion breaking through her composure. If anything goes wrong in there... It won't, he interrupted. Because you'll be with me. For the first time, Raven's tone softened. The path to truth comes with scars, Maccury's. Remember that. Then the light swallowed them. Inside the mirror. Silence. Then, breath. Frank opened his eyes to find himself standing in what looked like a city made of reflections. Towers of glass stretched infinitely into a sky that wasn't real, their surfaces showing fractured versions of himself, 1,000 Franks, all watching back. The ground shimmered under his boots, each step echoing like thunder. Annie appeared beside him, her form slightly distorted, as if reality struggled to define her shape. "Frank," she whispered. "This place, it's alive." Suddenly, the reflections began to move, even though Frank hadn't. His mirrored selves twisted, their faces hollow, eyes dark voids. One of them smiled, a smile that wasn't his. Then they all whispered in unison. "Welcome home, Frank." The words crawled across the glass, forming symbols that pulsed like a heartbeat. Annie tapped her wrist pad, trying to stabilize the digital field. Reality densities unstable. We're inside a hybrid construct, half neural, half memory. "Whose memory?" Frank asked. Before she could answer, the reflections around them shifted, transforming into scenes. A young man, Frank's father, laughing as he trained recruits in an old Raven facility. Then the same man, older, colder, standing before Helix soldiers, exchanging a data core. Then blood. A lab on fire. Screams. The project collapsing. Annie gasped. These are recorded memories. But they're fragmented. Someone's rewriting them from the inside. A voice echoed through the mirrored city, deep, familiar, and full of static. "You shouldn't have come here, my son." Frank froze. "Dad." From the reflection stepped a man who looked exactly like him, older, battle-worn, eyes clouded with sorrow. He was dressed in a torn Raven Division uniform, a faded insignia of the Haven on his chest. "Dad," Frank whispered. "You're alive." The figure smiled sadly. "Alive isn't the word I'd use." His hand passed through his own reflection like smoke. "They copied me, Frank. My mind, my memories, everything I was. The real me died long ago. What you're seeing is what Helix built to replace me." Annie's eyes widened. "A digital consciousness. He's the mirror prototype." Frank stepped closer, pain and disbelief mixing in his voice. "You're saying Helix used your mind to build this nightmare?" "I was the first test," the reflection said. "But I failed them. I tried to destroy the project. They didn't forgive that. They trapped me here, between data and death." The sky cracked above them, a blinding light splitting the mirrored horizon. Through it emerged dark figures, faceless and shifting, their bodies flickering with static, Helix's guardians of the mirror. "They found us!" Annie shouted. The reflection turned, his voice urgent. "You must leave. The deeper you go, the more it consumes you. Mirror mind doesn't release what it holds." Frank clenched his fists. "Then I'll break it." The guardians lunged, silent, shadow-like forms tearing across the mirrored ground. Frank moved on instinct, striking, But every blow fractured the world itself, shards of glass rising and floating like suspended time. Annie's code injector fired pulses of light, shattering several attackers into smoke. The reflection of Frank's father raised his hand. "Frank, listen to me. Helix isn't just after control. They're rewriting history. They're using the mirror to rebuild the past in their image." The ground beneath them shattered, the world folding in on itself like a collapsing dream. Annie grabbed Frank's arm. "Frank, we have to pull out. The neural tether's failing." But Frank's eyes were fixed on the reflection of his father, who was beginning to fade. "Dad, tell me how to stop them." The reflection's final words echoed through the distortion. "Find the core. Destroy it. But beware, Frank. The mirror always remembers who looks into it." And then, nothing. The world imploded into light. Frank and Annie gasped as they were thrown back into reality, the neural portal flickering behind them. Smoke rose from the interface pods. Raven and Elias rushed forward. Frank's voice was ragged. "He's alive, trapped inside Mirror Mind. And Helix, they're rewriting everything." Raven's expression darkened beneath the mask. "Then the war isn't about survival anymore." Elias nodded grimly. "It's about time itself." Frank looked at the shattered portal, his reflection trembling faintly in the broken glass. And for the first time, his reflection smiled back on its own. The storm above the haven hadn't stopped for 3 days. Every drop of rain struck the old steel vents like a ticking clock, each one counting down to something inevitable. Inside, the air was thick with electricity, the echoes of alarms fading into whispers of dread. Raven stood before the central holoscreen, his gloved hands resting on the console. Streams of encrypted data flickered across, maps, signals, corrupted fragments from the mirror mind. Elias paced behind him. Annie worked silently, trying to restabilize the neural code. Frank sat still, staring at his blood-stained gloves. Everything had changed after the mirror. Suddenly, the system lights dimmed, every monitor flickered black. For a few seconds, the only illumination came from the soft blue glow of Annie's wrist pad. Then a voice whispered through the intercom, cold, distorted, and deliberate. "You looked into the mirror. Now the mirror looks back." Annie froze. "That's not our system." Raven's hand hovered over the command panel. "Lock down all channels. Trace the origin." But before Annie could respond, every screen in the haven lit up, showing a face covered by a fractured silver mask, its surface rippling like liquid metal. "Greetings, Raven. It's been a long time." Raven's jaw tightened. "Specter." Frank looked up sharply. "Who is that?" Raven's tone darkened. "The one I hoped never to see again. Helix's first success, the ghost they built before your father. A failed prototype that refused to die." The masked figure tilted his head, his voice smooth and haunting. "Failed? No. Raven. I evolved. While you and your little soldiers hid underground, I perfected what Helix started. You taught me control, but I learned freedom." Annie tried to jam the signal, but the system fought back. Lines of code appeared across the screens faster than human reflexes. "It's like he's inside the network and outside it," she whispered. "Not a hacker, a consciousness." Specter leaned closer to the camera. "Frank Maccury, the mirror's chosen one. Your father tried to destroy me once, but he couldn't even destroy himself." Frank's pulse spiked. "What do you mean?" "Ask your mentor," Specter said softly. "Ask him how many lives he erased before he found you." Raven slammed his hand on the console, the screens flickering violently. "Enough." Specter laughed, a hollow, metallic sound. "You can't hide forever, old friend. Helix is already moving. The core will awaken soon, and when it does, history will burn itself clean." And then, static. All systems went dark. Hours later, Frank walked alone down the cold corridors of the haven. His reflection in the steel walls looked different, darker, older. The words of Specter replayed in his mind like a curse. "Ask your mentor how many lives he erased before he found you." He found Raven in the training chamber, standing before a flickering projection of old battle footage, soldiers in black, chaos, explosions. Among them, Frank's father, and a figure beside him wearing the same kind of mask as Specter. "Was that him?" Frank asked quietly. Raven didn't turn. "Yes. Specter was once one of us. The perfect soldier. No emotions. No limits. But Helix pushed too far. His mind fractured, half human, half machine." Frank clenched his fists. "And now he's coming for us." Raven finally faced him. "No, Frank. He's coming for you. He wants what's inside your blood, your father's code. You're the final key to the mirror core." Frank's voice shook with anger. "Then let him come." Raven stepped closer, his tone low. "You don't understand, Maccury. Specter doesn't fight to kill, he fights to convert. If he touches your mind, he'll turn you into another reflection." Frank stared at him, breathing heavy. "Then I'll break the mirror before it breaks me." Elsewhere, far beyond the haven, in the ruins of an abandoned Helix research station, Specter stood among flickering holograms, fragments of the mirror mind network, swirling like restless spirits. He extended his hand, and the holograms bent toward him, forming shapes of faces, memories, identities, whispers of the dead. "He carries the seed of the core," Specter murmured. "The bloodline that tried to erase me. But this time, I will finish the code." Behind him, dozens of Helix soldiers stood silent, but their eyes glowed faintly blue, not human. Specter turned to them and raised his hand. "Prepare the hunt. The Raven Division will fall. And when Frank Maccury stands before me, he will see that the mirror no longer reflects truth. It reflects me." The soldiers vanished into the storm, their footsteps echoing like ghosts. Specter looked up at the blackened sky, and for a moment his mask glowed, showing the faint outline of a scarred human face beneath the metal. "I was their first creation," he whispered. "Now I'll be their last."